Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sisterly. You're here, as always, with Rebecca and Olivia. We're so excited to be here with you today. Woo! Woo.
Woot woot.
We have a really exciting episode for you today. It's all about like the second half of our career journey. We talked a little bit about career stuff when we were younger and like teens, and this is more about kind of finding your passion and what you want to do a little bit later on in life. So we're super excited to talk about that today. But before we get into our topic, we got to do our usual check-in, a
Little chit
vibe check,
chat.
little chit
Vibe
chat,
check.
vibe check. How are the vibes today? I hope they're immaculate. Immaculate vibes only.
Speaking of the vibes, spoiler warning for anyone. Although we
Spoiler
won't do too
alert.
many spoilers, but Euphoria finale was yesterday. How
Euphoria
do you feel
finale was
about
yes.
it?
I feel like
I'm pleased with
75%
some
okay.
parts. Yeah, exactly. I'm pleased with some
Yeah.
parts, displeased with others. Some things were
And here
unsurprising. Some things I'm just left being like, but actually you didn't close this plot hole. Like I need to know
yeah.
what happened here.
Here's my thing about like season finales these days. It used to be very different back in the day when you had a 24 episode season. It ran from like school, like the school year, like from September to May, you
Right.
had episodes that you could pretty much count on, and then it came back next year. The problem these days is that we have no idea when we are getting another season.
Yeah,
It could
everyone
be
is saying it's
in
coming
2
back
to
in
3 years.
2024.
I know. I'm like, 2 more years? Seriously? For 8 episodes? Like,
They're gonna
how are you
be too old looking to play high schoolers at this
they
point.
already I mean, not to bring up Jacob Elordi for the 80th time, but that man, he's actually only
He's not a high
24 in real
schooler,
life, but he
but
looks like
still.
he's, like, 32. Like, it's kinda ridiculous,
Yeah.
and, so normally I wouldn't care too much that there were a lot of, like, empty plot holes, or I guess the holes were not connected.
Yeah. It's
Filled,
more like it's not
whatever.
even holes, it's like loose threads. Like they didn't tie them
Yes.
up. They didn't
Right.
wrap it like I need to know there was zero fallout from that suitcase?
Right. Like, what's going
Like
on there?
Lori just let her get away with that? I thought she was about to be trafficked. Like I mean, I'm
I
happy
also
she's
thought this.
not, but also I can't imagine that Lori's just gonna forgive and forget and let bygones be bygones.
I completely agree. Like, she's a drug dealer, so I don't think she's just gonna let
Right.
$10,000 worth of drugs, like, go
Right, and she's, like, one of
unnoticed.
the creepiest people on the show, like, she has,
Right.
like, threatens everyone. I'm like, there's no way that she just, like, used all those drugs, didn't repay her, got trapped in the house, then ran away, and, like, everything's fine.
Yeah. So I don't know, the fact that we have to wait 2 years, even 18 months is ridiculous to me. Like, if you're only
Yeah.
gonna put out 8 episodes for a season, I need them to be yearly or I'm gonna forget about your show.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna
that
forget
what's
about it.
gonna happen is it's gonna come back, and I'm gonna need to rewatch everything to even remember
That's
what's
what just
going on.
happened to me with Ozark. Like, Ozark came back, I was so excited, we started watching it. Every 5 seconds, I'm turning to Jack, like, "What are they talking about? I don't remember what happened."
I like
Like,
ha like, when shows are like, have that much time in between, I have to rewatch beforehand because 'cause I'm like, "I don't know what's going on, I can't
and
remember
there's
anything."
but there's so much content coming out these days, I don't have time to
I know.
continuously rewatch shows I've already watched. I need a consistent schedule, okay?
Yeah, it's crazy. I miss the days when it was just like, yeah, I had like my show that I would watch on Tuesdays and my show I would watch on Thursdays, and they were just like
Yes.
24 episodes and they were on, like you said, like fall to the spring. Yeah, not so much anymore. I just watched a limited series called Inventing Anna.
Yeah,
It's like
don't no spoilers, though,
I
because
will
I haven't watched it yet, and
no,
I'm
no,
gonna
no
start watching
spoilers.
it.
This is no spoilers. This is just a plug for the show. It's like about like a real life story, like a girl who said she was a German heiress and like gets all these people to kind of do things for her in New York and like sort of like about what happens. And it's just like a wild show. And I was getting like secondhand anxiety in some of the episodes because I was just like, I'm so anxious for what this girl is doing, like all the things she's pulling off, all of this money on the table. Like I was just, I can't imagine. I was so stressed. Also, it's created by Shonda Rhimes and, like, Netflix, and so there's, like, a ton of Scandal and Grey's Anatomy people in the show, so every time someone walked on, I was like, "Oh, it's you. Oh, it's you."
I can't wait for that. And I'm blanking on her name right now, but I love the main character.
Oh, she's in
She
Ozark.
Yeah, she's in Ozark. So I'm very excited to watch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um I also watched this last week Love is Blind.
Oh, I haven't seen season 2
So
yet. Mm-mm.
I won't give any spoilers, but it was insane. There's a villain. Everyone, if you've seen it, you know the villain that I'm talking about. Actually, there's like a couple villains. Talking about the girl villain. We hate her. I hate her. Like,
I have to
oh.
watch. I haven't watched it yet.
And Netflix is now doing this weird thing, which is very new for them, where they put out like half of the episodes one week. The next week they put out like the other half of the episodes. Then the week
Oh,
after they put out the
so they're not
finale.
all out?
So the finale came out on Friday, but the reunion is coming out this coming Friday.
Got it,
So
got it, got it.
it's wild. And I need to catch up on Real Housewives of New Jersey and Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Oh, I
Speaking
just forgot last episode was the first part of the reunion, wasn't it? I
This
gotta watch
past
that.
weekend was the first part of the reunion. The week
Yep.
before was the season finale.
Yeah, I watched the finale, but I haven't
Okay.
watched the reunion.
Speaking of
Got
Salt
it.
Lake City, I felt like a real housewife of Salt Lake City this weekend because I went skiing for the first time in literally 18 years.
Look at her,
I
tearing up the
haven't
slopes.
I haven't been skiing since I was 7 years old. I think is that math correct?
How old are you? 25?
I'm 25. Is 18
7?
plus 7
Yeah,
25?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. Um Good math. Yeah, so that was wild. Um, but it was kind of funny because I went to this like outlet store to get a bunch of snow gear because I've mentioned I live in San Francisco. I don't have snow gear anymore. So like went to this outlet store, got like the best but cheapest snow gear I could find, and they only had white snow pants. That was the only snow pants they had. They were cute, but so I'm wearing white snow pants, and then I got like a white fleece and a black jacket, but it was so warm this weekend, and by so warm, I mean it was like in the 40s, but you're skiing, so you're sweating, and it was
Right, that's not
sunny,
that
so
cold
I
for
like
skiing.
took off my outer layer, so I'm in like white snow pants
It's a
and a
little
white
snow
fleece.
going down the slopes.
I felt like someone from Real Housewives
Yeah.
in my little white outfit. I was like, if only it was Chanel.
If only.
If only I would be an actual housewife. But yeah, I feel like I actually picked it up kind of fast. I mean, not that I was doing well at all, but like,
But you're, like, going down the mountain and not falling on your face. That's
yeah,
success in my book.
I did fall down a few times though. I cannot get off of a chairlift.
I've
I,
heard that's really hard. I remember it being stressful that one time I went as a kid.
I also think my own anxiety like makes it worse.
Yeah.
But I fell so many times getting off the chairlift. Also fell to the point where like at one point I fell underneath the chairlift.
No.
It was fine. Like the dude was like, "No worries. Go ahead, drag yourself to the side." Because I also can't for the life of me figure out how to like get back up in two skis.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I could not get back up in two skis. I could get up in one ski, but two skis, I would like fall over and I would just be like, "Jack." Like,
Assist
"Jack,
me.
like I need you to come like help me up." He literally had to like hoist me up. So
It's
thank
good
God
that
for
he can do
Jack.
that.
Yeah, my other friends tried to hoist me up. They couldn't. But bless them, bless my friend's husband who also came over and was like, "I can try to help you." Couldn't get me up. He's like, "Do you want me to like get behind you and like push your butt up?" And I was like, "You're amazing, but
But
this is too
no.
embarrassing for me." It's like, "We got to get my boyfriend over here." It's too
Yeah,
embarrassing
skis
having all
are
these people trying to
definitely
hoist me up.
tricky to maneuver. I feel like it's more just, like, the awkwardness of them and, like, the angle that you need to be at
All of a
to.
sudden your knees are in like the weirdest angle.
Yeah.
There's like at one point my knee was in a weird ankle. I wasn't injured, but it like I couldn't move my leg. I was like
Yeah.
I need because
You're stuck.
I was stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, a
But
friend of
other
mine who
than
loves
that,
skiing recently just, like, broke his knee, and I just feel like it would be so easy to break your knee skiing because I just feel like you fall in
yeah,
such weird directions.
yeah. But I went slow and steady. I did some bunny hills, then I did like a green a few times. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't going crazy, but I was pretty proud of myself and I enjoyed it enough that I would do it again. So
Good.
that's
That's what you
really
want out of an experience.
yeah, agreed. Um, so anywho, that's it for our updates. We're so excited to get into today's topic. Okay, so for today's topic, it was kind of inspired by what's going on in my life currently. Um, I don't know if anyone remembers, but in our New Year's episode, I talked about kind of one of my goals or things I wanted to work toward was continuing to reach my career goals. And one of the goals that I've been working to for maybe the last like 6 months or so is just kind of figuring out my next kind of shift. Basically, I've worked in communications for several years, and I have mentioned before I work at a beauty company, and I love beauty in general. So I basically wanted to make a career shift so that I'm working more with our actual product and less on just the communications side. So I've been working about on this for about like 6 months, talking to a lot of people at my company, and have recently just received an offer for a role on like the kind of more product beauty side.
Yay!
Woo! So very excited about that. But we thought it could be really cool to do um, another episode talking about career and finding your interests and basically everything that's gone on in our own personal journeys and the tips that we've learned for those of you out there that are also working towards a career goal or hate your job or like Rebecca are in school and all of a sudden are like, wait a minute, I absolutely don't want to do what I thought I wanted to do. How do
Mhm.
I figure
How
out
do
what
I
I'm interested
pivot?
in? Yeah, pivot. How do we
Pivot?
pivot? It's a Friends reference for those of you that don't watch Friends. So yeah, that's kind of what inspired today's episode. Um, so I'll kick it back to you, Rebecca, because I feel like we can talk a little bit in timeline order, and your kind of career realizations happened a little bit before mine.
Yeah, so I mentioned this a bit on a previous episode. I forget which one, but basically, I went into college thinking that I was going to be pre med. I wanted to be a pediatrician, and that was sort of what I had my mind set on. Um, and I took all the classes for it. I took bio and chem and physics and math and statistics, and along with all my other required courses and courses for my major. And it got to be the summer before my senior year of college, and I was taking organic chemistry and I was studying for the MCAT and I was working, and I was just like, this ain't it. And I was having a mental breakdown. And um I was just like so anxious and having panic attacks, and just also like as the years went on in school, just realizing that every time I didn't do well in class, it was like a science related course. Like I was loving the courses for my major, the courses for my minor, all of my general requirements. Like I love those classes. I thought they were so interesting and I did well in them. But every time I took a class that was like for supposed to be for my chosen profession, I was crashing and burning and miserable and just like couldn't understand why I wasn't getting it. And I was studying so hard. I would study all the time. I would spend a ton of time in the library. I was like not out there like avoiding studying. I was like trying my hardest, and it still just wasn't happening for me. And the way that my classes were graded at school were also all on a curve. And I don't know if every school does it like this, but at least mine did. So like all of those classes that I took, physics, calc, bio, they were all graded on a curve. So they were graded on based on how much better or worse I did relative to my peers in those classes. Um, so that was also very discouraging because it wasn't even like, oh, I don't, it's just more like, do I know the material more or less than the people in my class? Anyway, so it got to that summer and I was just sort of like, this isn't working. This isn't like happening for me. And I went to see like a one of our advisors at school to be like, this is what my grades are, like this is what I'm getting in these classes. And I had previously seen an advisor who was basically like, you're not going to get into med school with these grades, like it's not going to happen for you. And I, being me, took that as a challenge instead of helpful advice. So I
Been
was
there.
like, well, screw that, and I just like kept doing it anyway. And I think it was probably just like a lesson I had to learn for myself, because I took it as like her sort of doubting me or criticizing me or putting me down. But in hindsight, what she was also saying to me was like, why don't you take a pause on these classes? Like, take other classes in your major that you're just interested in and see how you like them. See if you like other areas, and, you know, maybe you will, and then you can just like pursue this, and that will be great. Um but I didn't want to hear that at that time in my life. So I kept going with it, and it wasn't until almost my last year of college that I started to be like, you know, maybe she had a point.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's time I take that advice. And I saw a different advisor who I had more of like a rapport with and who I like trusted. And she was just like, yeah, I mean, this, you seem miserable and this isn't going well for you and you're not having a positive experience. So why don't you try taking some other things and pursuing other areas so that before you leave college, you know about some other fields that you might be interested in. So I took her advice reluctantly, and I took classes that were just in my major, which was more like kind of like public health, sociology type classes, and I really liked them. And I also started doing an internship that was all about children's policy, because as I mentioned, I was interested in being a pediatrician. I like thought about, I wanted to work with kids, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, this seems like related. And it was like this nonprofit that involved doctors, nurses, social workers, and lawyers who were all collaborating to work on children's policy. And I thought that was really interesting. So I would just like show up and I would like attend their meetings to hear what they were talking about and see what they were doing. And um, I started to realize that there was just more than one avenue to achieve something I thought was important, which was like helping people and helping children and families. And I through that internship, I also got to like go to court one day and see like how the lawyers for that nonprofit um, did work on behalf of children, and it just was sort of really eye opening to be like, oh, there's more than one avenue to pursue sort of the general idea of what I'm looking for. Like, I don't have to be in a doctor's office to affect change or to do something that feels meaningful. Um, so that was like sort of the start of me being like, oh, okay, maybe there's like other ways that I could think about this. And I wish that in high school and college, people told kids more about what careers are even out there. I feel like when you grow up, people are like, what do you want to be? And it feels like the options are like doctor, lawyer, nurse, like maybe engineer, astronaut. Like, I feel like they're
Yeah.
just like they're kind of limited, and there's so many careers out there that, like, I mean, maybe it's hard to explain to a kid, but I feel like as you get older and you're in high school and college, like there's so many different business type roles. There's so many different like social work and counseling type roles. There's so many just different categories of things that you can do that I don't think people or kids know enough about.
Mhm.
And I feel like as a child who liked certainty, I wanted to be like, okay, let me pick a job. I know exactly what it is,
Mhm.
doctor, and I know exactly how I have to get there. I go to college, then I have to go to medical school, then I am a doctor, and I have to do my residency, and boom, I have like this job that I know what it is.
Yeah, I wish that we focused more on what you were interested in, and I like that one of your advisors was like, "Let's just keep taking classes that sound interesting to you," because I think if we focused more on just what our areas of interest are, the career part can come later, you know?
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
just need to focus more on doing things that you like, and so I can talk a little bit about my undergrad experience, and, when I went into college, I kind of always knew that I was interested in communications, and I remember talking to my parents about that, and they were like, "What is comm?" Like, they were actually a little bit nervous about me doing that because they didn't know what that meant, and they didn't know how that led to a career, um, and, I always knew that that was something I was interested in. So I went into college pretty confident about that. There was a period before college I thought I was going to go into engineering, but then I took calculus. So I knew before college that that wasn't happening. But I felt pretty certain about comm, but I did come in undeclared, so I was able to just kind of take classes that I thought were interesting. And I did stick with comm. I always liked my classes. I always did well in my classes because it was a genuine area of interest. But I also started taking a lot of anthropology classes and decided that I wanted to major in anthropology as well. And to be honest, I knew I never wanted a career in anthropology, mainly because what I learned about in those classes was what that looked like as a career. And it's a lot of field work, it's a lot of research. And it wasn't that part that I was necessarily interested in. I really just liked learning from others' research about anthropology. And I just liked the framework that it set up about learning about different types of cultures, different types of people, all of that. That was what was really interesting to me. And then I thought that that paired really well with communications because it was all about learning about different cultures and how to communicate with all different types of people and through different mediums and all that. But I mean, I also got a lot of shit as a communications major. I mean, people would make fun of me all the time about picking the easiest major, about how people in comm didn't really have to work, about how that was never gonna land me a career, like, all that shit, heard all of that and continued to do it. Um, and then I graduated college and I got a job in comm. So, jokes on everyone else, like, there are a lot and people would just constantly make comments about, like, "What are you gonna do with that? Like, how is that gonna build a career?" And there are tons of jobs in communications, like, a bunch of jobs,
Yeah,
and, um, the point of that is not just to make a case for that for communications, but the fact that it doesn't really matter if other people in your immediate circle don't know how you're gonna make a living off of
right.
XYZ, because believe it or not, you will. There are plenty of outlets out there. I mean, like, people now make fun of, folks who major in women and gender studies. They're like, "How are you gonna get a job in that?" There are so many opportunities to support women and all genders and all, if you wanna take, like, LGBTQ plus history, like, there are plenty of ways to make a career in supporting members of that community, members of all types of communities. Like, people are like, how are you gonna make a, career out of history? It's like, listen, there's a
Right.
job, okay?
Yeah, just because they don't have the vision doesn't mean that your vision isn't right.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's doesn't exist. Like,
Right.
so I think I was lucky in the fact that I kind of found my areas of interest pretty early, and I was able to continue to discover what a career and that looked like. But now I actually have decided, you know what? That career was great for a few years, and now I want to completely shift. But I think before we get to that, let's thank our I'm just kidding, we don't have any sponsors. But before we get to that, let's go back to Rebecca
Uh,
and to talk about we're sponsored by my cats. Um, and talk about how you figured out that law was something you wanted to do.
I feel like we should honestly be sponsored by Euphoria by the amount of time we talk about them and Zendaya.
Listen, HBO Max, hit us the F up. Like, this is ridiculous. We promote your show every week. So,
True. If they wanna come calling, we'll answer.
Zendaya, hello?
Okay, okay, back to our topic. So, anyway, so that's how we sort of left it with, like, me deciding to, like, expand my horizons career-wise, and I feel like the biggest thing that I took away from that time period was that I needed to focus on more on what I actually liked and what I actually found interesting versus what I thought I was supposed to do. And I'm a stubborn person who also can get like locked into something. And it's like, you have to be able to like take in new information and adapt. And so
Mhm.
doing that would have been taking in how poorly I did in these classes, taking in how badly they made me feel, and realizing that it's time to consider other options.
It's so hard though, and I totally get that because it's almost like we're related or something. I have a similar quality. And when people tell me I can't do it, I'm like, watch me do it harder.
Yeah, exactly. I double down.
Yeah, like
So
I was told so many times, like, you can't take these classes, they're gonna be too hard for you. And I was like, watch me do it. And a lot of times I always did it, but it was really hard. Or I did it and I did it really poorly. So sometimes it's hard not to take that defensively. And a lot of times people are saying it in a rude way. But it's always worth asking yourself, like, is there any truth behind what they're saying? Maybe the truth isn't that, you can't do it, but that you just really don't like it,
right. That's
or
not
that
the
it's
right
not
fit.
bringing you joy, or like, okay, maybe if I suck at biochem, like maybe I don't want to be a doctor. Not to say that maybe that's not the case, like, but if it sucks now, like, do you want to do 4 more years of it?
Right.
You wanna put
Exactly.
yourself through that, Doesn't mean you can't, just do you want to?
Yeah. So as I took that last year to sort of like think about it, I started like changing my focus a bit and thinking about, okay, maybe like a different avenue to pursue the same sorts of things that I was interested in another way would be to do it through the law. So, after I graduated college, I ended up working as a paralegal for a law firm, which was not the specific area of law I knew that I was interested in, but I just sort of wanted to get like a foot in the door to be like,
We
okay,
all need a
law
jumping
setting.
off point.
We all need somewhere. We all need to make money. So,
Yeah. Your first job does not have to be your dream job. I feel like sorry, I don't wanna, like, cut you off, but I feel like that's a really important point
yeah,
to stress here, like, a lot of times people think that the first job, whether it's out of college, out of high school, whatever, that it needs to be, like, indicative of your interests or a stepping point
for like, yeah, your dream
for your
job.
dream job, and it's like, it
It's
can
not
also just be a
always.
job where you pick up skills, maybe make
Exactly.
a connection, get a
Right.
letter of reference, like,
Hmm.
or it can be the absolute worst experience of your life, and that's okay because you can quit, you know? Doesn't have to be forever.
Exactly. So, I worked as a paralegal for this corporate group, and I already knew that like that wasn't exactly the type of thing that I wanted to do, but I still, like we're saying, I wanted the experience, I wanted stuff for my resume, I wanted to just like be in that setting, especially because I'd only spent the last year of college thinking about law. It's not like I had all sorts of experiences that I could point to that would make sense to someone if I was like, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer now." They'd be like, Why?" So, um, that was sort of my first step in seeking that out, and then I ended up going to law school, and now I work um, in litigation, which for people who don't know, that's um, it's often the type of law that you see on TV, like that can end up in court. Although, to be clear, I don't work for the government. I'm not out there like prosecuting, and I'm not a criminal defense attorney. So I'm not like what you see in Law and Order. Um,
She's what you see in Criminal Minds. I'm kidding.
no.
I'm just kidding.
um, but it can involve trial, although a lot of times things usually result in settlement rather than actually going to trial these days because going to court is expensive. um but I sort of took my experience from college and my experience from being a paralegal and my experience from in law school to decide what area made sense for me. And I decided on litigation, um, for like a number of reasons. But some of the things that I considered when I was deciding, like, okay, what kind of law do I want to actually do, and even within a law firm, what area of the law do I care about? Um, and one of the things I thought about is thinking long term. How do I envision my life and like my day to day? How do I see myself spending my time? What kinds of tasks would I prefer to be doing? And like for example, in corporate law, it's a lot of like drafting contracts and a lot of times you're working on deals or things that are like really all of a sudden, like it's like quiet, and then all of a sudden it's like all hands on deck and people can stay up like really late into the night, and it's just like a different kind of lifestyle, whereas litigation can get busy, but usually you have like scheduled court dates and you know when things are coming, and litigation can span on for years rather than a deal that can be like really really quick for a few weeks or months and then die out and then you get a new one. So I was more interested in sort of like a slow and steady pace versus like quick and all consuming. um so I think those are important things to think about when you're thinking about a career for the first time or a shift. Like what is the lifestyle of a person who works in this job? Like, what do their hours look like? What do they spend their day doing? You know, in the beginning of my job, I do a lot of research, I do writing, I do editing. Um, you know, are those things that you like in a job? Is that something that you would be okay spending your time doing? Um, Another thing to think about is like the path to get to your sort of end goal. Like, does that path feel worth it to you? Like, when I initially was thinking about being a doctor, I knew what the path was in theory. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Like, I like a plan. I like knowing my steps. I know what I need to do. But in actuality, the path was really, really hard for me to the point that I was like, I actually don't think that this is worth it. Even though I think I could be okay at this end goal, like I think I'd make a nice doctor. I don't know that I'm willing to subject myself to the path it would take me to get there. Um, Whereas the path to become a lawyer has its own challenges, but it felt like something that was more manageable and interesting for me.
Yeah, and another thing I think is important to bring up is I remember a lot of times along the way, people outside of your circle would make comments about like, "Oh, you really wanna be a lawyer? Like, you shouldn't be a lawyer. Like, it's a dying industry." Or like,
Yeah, or people be like, "Oh, like law school was miserable," or just like really negative about the
yeah.
experience.
And I remember it would spook you sometimes, or you would just be like it would put you in a mood because obviously it would, because I remember we would go to, like, family Christmas parties, and, like, distant family members would be like, "What are you doing? Like, don't do that. That's a bad idea." Like, all this stuff, and you would be like, am I making a mistake?" And we'd always talk it out, and it's like, ignore people and their opinions. Also, our dad and our stepmom are lawyers, so, like, we have lawyers in our more immediate family versus these like rando friends of family or like friends of friends who would like
Unsolicited
throw
opinions.
in unsolicited opinions. So I think it's just an important point to hit on, that you really need to kind of quiet the external noise about your interests or your career, like, interests at all. Um because it doesn't really matter what anyone else
Yeah,
says. All that really matters is how you feel about it, and if you're passionate about it, you're gonna make it work. It might not
right.
look exactly how you thought it would in the beginning, but you're gonna make it happen because that's what you're interested in, and it's better to work at finding the right job in an industry you're passionate about than have an easy job, like an easy entry into a job that you hate.
Right. I think the important thing is to like really know yourself, and that can be hard to do when you're 18 years old starting college, which is why like college or other work experience is like can be just useful to let you know what you like and what you don't like, because how are you supposed to know at 18 years old? But I think knowing yourself and knowing what works for you is important. And yeah, like Olivia said, like quiet that external noise, because people can give you their opinions, but their opinions are based on them and not necessarily on you, what you're capable of, what your interests are, and how that experience will be for you. I remember even when I was a paralegal at a law firm, people would tell me that I shouldn't go to law school because it was like a miserable time for them. These people are lawyers. And I was like, oh. And then I went to law school and I liked it. Like, I mean, there were parts where, you know, it's hard. There's like homework, there's a lot of reading, but like I had an overall very
Yeah, I feel
positive
like you liked it more
experience.
than undergrad, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, because I was just like, oh, hey, like this is actually clicking for me. And I'm not wasting my time being just like frustrated and discouraged constantly. And I just felt like not that it has to be easy, and there were moments that it wasn't, but it was just like, "Oh, I feel like I'm getting this, and this feels interesting, and it feels like I there's a reason why I'm here." And I was just so glad that I didn't let people spook me out of it, because I feel like I had about as positive as an experience as you can in like grad school. And like the cool thing about grad school is too is that usually you're studying something that you've decided you care about. So it's
Mhm.
often worth it even when it gets hard, because you've decided this is a thing that's worthwhile.
Totally. And I remember in college too, I still would have these doubts about majoring in communications because other people kept making comments about how it was a fake major. So I would try and take classes. I remember I like took another calc class because I was like, maybe I should just give math another shot. You know what? Didn't do great. Hated it again. Like I should have just trusted myself the first time. Like I don't want to be an engineer or a math major, and that's okay. Like it's okay that I'm in a comms class that I really like and I'm doing well in. It doesn't matter what other people think about it. But despite the fact that I really knew that I liked my major, that I had these areas of interest, it was still kind of hard to like whittle down to what I wanted that to be in a career. Um, so I kind of did a lot of like process of elimination, to be honest. I knew what comms could lead to. I knew that it could lead to a lot of different industries. So I was like, okay, let's start looking at these industries and sort of decide where I want to go with it first. So I took a lot of journalism classes in college and I really liked the writing part, but there were just certain parts of that lifestyle I knew I didn't really like. I don't really love going up and talking to strangers. You gotta do a lot of that as a journalist. You have to be really bold, and I knew that that could be hard for me sometimes. Sometimes you have to do things. I remember we had an assignment in journalism where we had to ride the bus and talk to people on the bus, and I remember that assignment made me wanna throw up the entire time, and I was like, "Maybe I can't do this because I don't wanna go up and talk to strangers all the time," and that's okay. So I was like, "We're gonna rule that out." I thought about publishing for a really long time because mainly I'd watched a lot of TV shows and the like characters are publishers and I was like, this seems super fun. Um, but also I love to read. I loved story writing. I love getting like lost in a complete fantasy, like loved that. So I was like, maybe I'm going to go into publishing. So I actually set up some informational interviews with people from my school who went into publishing. And I went and I talked to them and they gave me a lot of free books, which was super cool. But, through discussions, I realized that I wasn't entirely sure that this was an industry that I wanted to go into. One, because it actually was really changing from what it once was because of the digitalization, sorry, that word's hard for me to say, of books and how media is being consumed differently. Um, so I don't know, I kind of decided that wasn't for me. Also, like the salary is really challenging, and that's an okay thing to think about as well. So I decided that that wasn't for me. I also had an internship one summer that was in corporate communications, and I did really well at that internship, and I remembered liking it, but it was before my junior year of college. So I was like, "You know what? I like this, but I still want to see what else is out there because I don't want to get stuck too quickly in this." So I was like, "Great. I have this on the back burner." I had a student job in human resources because I was like, maybe that's what I want to go into. And I realized a lot of paperwork, not a ton of fun. So I kind of pushed that to the side. And then I just decided that I wanted to try working in PR, mainly because I thought it would be really fun to be like a public relations professional in like the celebrity world. Because I love, as you all probably know, love like entertainment, pop culture, all that stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna get a job in PR. So I got a job in PR, but it wasn't it wasn't in entertainment, it was in tech. But I thought that that would be a good first step to, becoming a publicist for the stars. And then I absolutely hated it. I hated it so much. I feel like the company wasn't for me, but also just the day to day of PR. I was like, there's not one part of this that I like. I hate every single aspect. Like, it was just not for me. It's also a lot of schmoozing. It's a lot of like selling the company,
Yeah,
even
being a
when,
salesman.
yeah, even when like what you're selling isn't 100% the truth. And that's not the case of like all PR. Like, I had one job for a year in PR. I'm not trying to act like I'm an expert, but it wasn't fitting. I didn't like it. And so then I went through a complete crisis in which I was like, okay, I have done all of this stuff in comms and I still haven't found it yet. I'm like, I haven't found my passion. So I went through like a little bit of a panic stage. I was like, I'm panicking. Like I did the wrong thing. Ugh." And I started doing more research into possible careers again, and then I decided that I wanted to pursue nursing. And you're probably like, "Okay, didn't expect that in your journey. You just talked
Plot
about
twist.
how you loved comms, yada yada yada." Well, the reason I got to nursing was one because we have a lot of women in our family who are nurses. So I had a pretty good idea of what the day to day looked like. And a lot of it is like, actually, it's a lot to do with communication, which you might be
Mhm,
like, what are you talking about? But as a nurse, you have a ton of face time with the patient. And so you need to be a good communicator. You need to be okay talking to people. You need to be like empathetic, um, all of that. So it's also a lot of writing too. I mean, you have to do a lot of write-ups of patient
mhm.
interactions. Um, but I knew that that was all stuff that I liked. Like, I do actually really like engaging with people. I just don't like walking up to strangers, which is why I knew no journalism. But I do like engaging with others. I like making people feel comfortable. I like learning about people from all walks of life. Like, that's really important when you need to be a nurse. And then also the added benefit is like I'm not squeamish. Like
Mhm, yeah, you're good.
I'm not a squeamish person. I like being a caretaker, all that. So I was like, you know what? I think nursing could really work for me. So I started talking to a lot of people in nursing once again, did a lot of research on what it would take to go back to school because I didn't, have the qualifications to be a nurse. Started taking online classes. Like I had to start taking a bio class, all that. Started my one of our aunts is a nurse and she's also a professor. So sat in on one of a nursing class at the school she teaches at. And I was like really on my way. I was like, I'm going to be a nurse. Like, I'm really taking the steps. I had a whole plan, took my GRE, all this stuff. But then I got an interview for the company that I currently work for. And it was still in communications, but it was more in internal communications. And I was really excited about it. And it was, for this company that I'm super passionate about. And so I took this job and I started loving it. And I was like, okay, like I didn't make a mistake with comms. It's like I just needed to find the right gig,
Place and
like
yeah.
the right people, the right day-to-day work. And so I was like, you know what? All right, we're not doing nursing. And I would still like to argue that I do still think I would like the career of nursing. I really do. And this is where things are like challenging sometimes. Like there's only so much time we have in our lives and there are a lot of careers out there and I don't think there's just one for you. I think there are a lot of careers that each person could enjoy or just jobs. Like also too, you don't necessarily have to have like a career mindset when finding a job. Like you just kind of have to like the day to day because it's what you're going to be doing for like most of your life. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but like you kind of just have to figure out if the day to day is something that you can find enjoyable. So I still think nursing would have been one of those things, but I really liked this job and it also involved a lot less of like going back to school and which I've never been I wouldn't say I'm like bad at school necessarily, but it's never been my strong suit. I've always been a better worker than I've been a student. I just like have the better skill set for being an employee and kind of working on my feet and just like getting in there and figuring it out than I have been like book smart, I guess. I feel like we could do a whole other episode on like book smart versus like street smarts.
Yeah, or just, like, there's so many different kinds of smarts. There's, like, emotional
Totally.
intelligence, like yeah.
Yes. Um So anywho, so I've been working in this current role for over 2.5 years, and I really liked it. Um, I've loved my team, it's been amazing, but through working for this company, I realized I really like the company, but there are other areas of it that I wanna work in. And, so that's when I kind of once again started this conversation of, like, where's my career going? And do I wanna make a change? And so I think these things can be really scary, but also really exciting at the same time because you start to ask yourself a lot of questions again of like, what do I like about what I'm doing day to day? What do I not like? What can I, not live without in a job? And what are some areas that I feel like I haven't explored enough of yet? It's just a lot of self reflection. And sometimes it's really scary because it can reveal that you hate where you are or that you have to go back to school to do something that you're interested in. So, the first thing I did when I started having this kind of like once again epiphany if I think I might want to make a career change is I talked to people on my team. I talked to my manager, I talked to my manager's manager, and that can be hard because if you decide that you, like, wanna go to a completely different company, for example, it can be hard to have that conversation with your manager, depends on what your relationship is. Luckily, I wanted to stay within my company, I just was having other areas of interest, but I recommend either reaching out to your manager if you have a good relationship, or maybe someone else in the company or your industry that you can kind of use as a mentor or ask questions. Sometimes it's helpful if they're a little bit older because they've had more experience so they can talk to you about, the different things they've done. But my managers encouraged me to have conversations with different people in the company to kind of figure out what it is that I'm looking for or, where I could go and what skill set I need to build. So I had conversations with people like in various departments of my company at different levels and would just set up 30-minute conversations with them to talk to them about what their day to day looks like, what their career has looked like to get to this point. Um, and what skill sets you need to be successful in that job. And I'm lucky that at the company I work for, we have like a very built out like competency like, I don't it's not a program isn't the right word, but just, like, our competencies needed for your job, it's, like, very built out. So you know what areas you need to grow in. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've probably had maybe, like, 10 conversations with different people from my company about what they do and, you know, if I would be a good fit in that role, and basically decided that I really wanted to work with our product. And so I was like, "Okay, great. I've figured that out. Now I need to start applying for jobs in this department." So I needed to tell my manager so that they were aware, reached out to a recruiter at my company and she was really helpful in, setting up interviews and telling me who to reach out to and all that. And I interviewed with a couple teams and was told no, and that was really hard. I was told no. And so I thought, maybe I need to rethink switching teams. Maybe I'm making the wrong decision. And it's also hard too because I like the current team I'm on. I just felt like there was more that I wanted to do with the company. And that was hard too. It's like, why am I leaving a good thing? Am I making the wrong decision? What if I hate my new team? And so there was a lot of nothing for a little while because I, wanted to interview and people didn't want me on their team, didn't think I had the right experience, all that. Another thing to kind of point out about this new job that I'm taking is I have to take a couple steps down in terms of like title and pay. And that can be a really tough decision. Not everyone is able to do that. I'm lucky that I'm in the place right now where I can do that in my life because I'm, 25. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have children that I have to support. So I can kind of make a decision that's based solely on what I want and not the needs of other people. So that's definitely something I'm lucky that I have right now. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, randomly, a woman on another team had an opening. The recruiter recommended me. I talked to her, talked to a couple other people on the team, and was offered the job. So I'm starting that soon. We're still in the transition phase. So I feel like hopefully we can do another episode to kind of keep people updated as we go down the line on, how it's going, if I feel like I made the right move or not. I'm definitely very nervous to see how it goes because change is hard. I'm not great with it. So it's going to be a journey. But yeah, if you stuck with us this long, there was a lot that I just said, and I felt like one breath about my career. So,
No, but I think that it's useful to know because I just feel like when you're younger, like I don't remember people talking a lot about shifting
mhm,
jobs or even shifting roles within a job. And I feel like it's good to know that it's so normal to like pivot and to change your mind or to realize things that are a better fit or to find roles that are more aligned with what you're like looking for. And I feel like you've given a lot of good advice about like reaching out to people, like doing these informational interviews, just like getting more information to know what's out there, and also like taking the time to know yourself and what you like so that you know what you'd be willing to do and what you're not.
yeah. And I think just not putting so much pressure on a job is kind of important. And it's hard to do. I remember too, like when I was graduating college, I put so much pressure on myself to find a job and have one lined up by the time I graduated. I was in a unique situation because, I live in California and I grew up on the East Coast. And so I knew I wanted to stay in California and I didn't want to have to do a whole big move, whatever. But also, like, a lot of times, like, people will reach out to me now, people who still go to the school I graduated from, or, I just know them from classes or from clubs, whatever. And they'll reach out to me and ask me for advice. And a lot of times I just say, like, try to enjoy the moment now. For example, if you're in college, like, try to enjoy your senior year because I spent so much time stressed out about the job that I was going to have when, like, I really like I was luckily I could have, graduated and moved back home for a couple months and just like figured it out then. And sometimes I wish I did. I think it ended up working out, but I wish I'd given myself a little bit more grace and just allowed things to happen you know, as they came and just taking it one day at a time and not feeling the need to plan my life out so far in advance, or plan every career move so far in advance. It's like, just take it one step at a time. And like part of me is like raging internally that I'm going kind of backwards. It's like I'm not going backwards because I'm moving forwards into an area of interest. But I have this like internal pull of like, wait, I'm going backwards. What am I doing? Like the whole point is to move forwards. Um, so even now it's like take a breath, remember why I'm doing what I'm doing, like what my goals are, what my areas of interest are. And because I'm moving into an area of interest, like I am moving forward. But hard to remember that.
So, those are just some of our thoughts on career changes, shifts, how to think about what you like in a job, what you're looking for, and like how to assess what roles might be right for you. Um, and hopefully, this was somewhat helpful. We would love to hear from you if you have changed jobs, changed careers, changed roles, how that was for you, what steps you took to get there. Because I think it's really interesting, and I think more people could use information on how okay it is to change your role or your job, and that um, finding the right thing for you is like worth doing, and you don't have to stay stuck in something just because you like made a decision once on what a job could be. um, and sometimes certain jobs or careers are just for like a certain phase of life, and then you just enter a new one and choose something different. But thank you so much for listening. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much for sticking with us. And we can't wait to talk to you next week on another episode. See you then.